Title: I'm 68 and still flying. Here's how. Most people assume that by the time you reach your late 60s, flying airplanes becomes a memory, something you used to do, something you talk about when you sit with friends at the airport cafe, but not something you actively do anymore. And yet, here I am, 68 years old, still flying, still planning trips, still watching the weather the night before a flight like I did when I was 30. And the truth is, flying today feels even better than it did decades ago. But staying in the air at this age doesn't happen by accident. There are reasons some pilots stop flying in their 60s, while others continue well into their 70s or even 80s. And today I want to share what I've learned about how to keep flying later in life. Not just technically, but physically, mentally, and practically. Because if you're watching this and you're thinking about learning to fly later in life or continuing to fly long after retirement, these lessons might matter more than you think. Let me take you back to the beginning. My first airplane experience was in a Cessna 150. Like many pilots, that little trainer became the gateway to everything. 2 seats, simple instruments, no luxury whatsoever. But when you lifted off the runway for the first time, none of that mattered. Because suddenly you were doing something humans dreamed about for centuries. You were flying. Later, I trained in the Cessna 172 Skyhawk, which is still one of the most forgiving and versatile training airplanes ever built. Thousands of pilots around the world started in that airplane. And even today, many experienced pilots keep one because it's simply enjoyable to fly. After a few years, I moved up to something with a little more capability, a Piper PA-28 Cherokee. That airplane opened the door to cross-country flying. Suddenly, the airport wasn't just a place to practice landings. It became the starting point for real travel, weekend trips, family visits, new cities. The Cherokee made all of that possible. Eventually, like many pilots, I started dreaming about something faster, something that could turn a 5-hour drive into a 2-hour flight. That's when aircraft like the Mooney M20U Ovation Ultra or the Cirrus SR-22 started looking very attractive, fast, efficient, comfortable, perfect for long trips. And I know many pilots watching this video are thinking about aircraft exactly like those, especially if you're planning to fly for travel in retirement. But here's something interesting that happens as you age in aviation. Your priorities change. Speed becomes less important. Comfort becomes more important. Simplicity becomes very important. And that shift is one of the reasons I'm still flying today. Around my early 60s, I made a conscious decision. I stopped chasing faster airplanes. Instead, I started looking for airplanes that were easier to fly, easier to manage, and more enjoyable during relaxed flights. Aircraft like the Cessna 182 Skylane. If you've never flown one, the Skylane is a remarkable machine. Stable, strong, capable of carrying a good load, and forgiving enough that you never feel rushed. For many pilots over 60, it's one of the best all-around airplanes you can own. Another aircraft that impressed me later in life was the Diamond DA-40 Star. Modern avionics, excellent visibility, smooth handling, and very predictable flight characteristics. Aircraft like that reduce workload, which becomes more valuable as the years go by. But here's the first real secret to flying at 68. Health. Not just passing the medical. Actual health. Because aviation medicine becomes more demanding as we age. You pay more attention to blood pressure, cardiovascular health, vision, all the things doctors have been telling us about for decades. But suddenly, those things determine whether you're allowed to fly. And that's when many pilots start taking their health much more seriously. Let's pause for a moment here, because I'm curious about something. If you're watching this and you're over 60, what has been the biggest challenge in staying current as a pilot? Is it medical exams, currency requirements, or simply finding time to fly? Write your answer in the comments. These conversations help younger pilots understand what the future of aviation might look like for them. Now let's talk about the second reason some pilots keep flying later in life. They adapt their flying style. For example, in my 40s, I loved fast cross-country trips. Aircraft like the Lancair 4P or the Cessna TTX fascinated me. High speed, serious performance, the kind of machines that turn long distances into quick flights. But they also demand attention. High speeds mean faster decision-making, more planning, more workload. At 68, I enjoy flying differently. I enjoy slower mornings, quiet air, scenic routes. Sometimes that means flying something simple like a Piper Cub, J3, low altitude, windows open, the kind of flying that reminds you why aviation exists in the first place. Some of my friends took this even further. One pilot I know sold his Beechcraft Bonanza G36 and started flying a Cub Crafter's X-Cub. Another moved from a Piper PA-46 Malibu to an Aviate Husky. Instead of flying from city to city, they explore backcountry strips, mountain valleys, grass runways. Flying becomes less about transportation and more about experience. And honestly, that kind of flying might be the most enjoyable of all. But of course, not everyone slows down. Some pilots in their late 60s continue flying serious machines. Turboprops like the Pilatus PC-12 NGX or Daher TBM 960. Large cabin aircraft like the King Air 260 or King Air 200-250. I even know one pilot in his 70s who occasionally flies a Cirrus Vision Jet SF-50. The key difference is discipline. Pilots flying those aircraft stay current, they train regularly, and they treat every flight with professional seriousness. Now here's the third reason I'm still flying at 68. I fly regularly. That sounds simple, but it matters more than you think. Flying is a perishable skill. If you fly once every 3 months, everything feels unfamiliar again. But if you fly every week, your brain stays connected to the airplane. Muscle memory remains sharp. Situational awareness stays strong. Even a short flight in something simple like a Grumman AA-1 or Piper Cherokee 140 can keep your instincts alive. Another thing I've noticed is that many older pilots start enjoying different types of aircraft. Light sport airplanes, utility aircraft, backcountry machines. Aircraft like the Pipistrel Virus SW, Aeropract A-22 Foxbat, or Zenith CH-750 STOL. These airplanes are incredibly efficient and fun. You don't need a long runway. You don't need high speeds. You just need good weather and curiosity. Of course, aviation still offers incredible machines if you want something bigger. Aircraft like the Quest Kodiak 100 or Cessna Turbo 26H Stationaire HD can take you into remote areas with confidence. Twins like the Beechcraft Baron G58 or Diamond DA42 Twin Star offer redundancy and capability. And if someone really wants luxury, there are aircraft like the Honda Jet Elite 2, Cessna Citation Longitude, or even something extraordinary like the Falcon 10X or Gulfstream G800. But here's something funny. After decades of flying, many pilots discover they don't actually need the biggest airplane. Sometimes the most satisfying flight happens in something small. Let me ask you something. Imagine you're 70 years old. The weather is perfect. Your airplane is waiting in the hangar. Which aircraft would you want to fly that morning? Would it be a comfortable traveler like the Cirrus SR-22, a rugged bush plane like the de Havilland Canada DHC-2 Beaver, or something light and playful like the Icon A5 over a quiet lake? Tell me in the comments. I always enjoy hearing how different pilots imagine their perfect flight. Because at the end of the day, aviation isn't about age. It's about curiosity, preparation, and respect for the responsibility of flying. At 68, I still feel that excitement every time the wheels leave the runway. The same feeling I had in that little Cessna 150 years ago. The sky hasn't changed. The joy hasn't changed. Only the perspective has. And honestly, the perspective might be the best part.